Oh, wait.
Yep.
Maybe. No, it's not working for me. Okay, we can start.
Okay. All right, thank you for your patience. We are back from executive session. Any comments on the approval of the agenda? We'll be voting on it next week. Minutes from the previous meeting, we'll also be voting on that next week.
Sorry, say that again. I didn't hear you and I lost my screen. Go ahead.
Approval of the agenda and minutes from the previous meeting. Do you have any comments on either? All righty. Communications, does anyone have any communications?
Again, I have several and I'd like to do my little, what do you call it next week? Your shout out, your report out on your visits to your elementary buildings. Again, I'll try to say this quickly. I'll start with that because wasn't quite surprised, but the central office was there talking about the building use and new transportation schedules for possibly for next year. And I thought that went pretty well. Heritage Heights PTA again runs a nice meeting, but an extended meeting last night, again, mostly because of the presentation. I think we're going to get again tonight, so I won't talk much about that. It was pretty well understood from what I understand, and there were some concerns about the times and the scheduling and that thing. I also heard that from another person today that called me about that, kind of trying to figure out how that will change their lives for their children. Okay, just so you know again. Then they have another question about Ames Web versus standardized testing. And why do we need to do both if Ames Web is adequately measuring the progress of students? And from what I understand is a progression and is useful that you can detect specific to a student some needs that need to be addressed. And again, the question about standardized testing, is it still required? Are all students allowed to opt out? Does that come out of the schools in a letter that says you can or cannot opt out? That was the question. Okay,
So-
you don't need to answer that now. I'm just relaying you the concerns of these people. Although if you have an answer, I'd like to hear it.
So Ames Web is, we have switched from STAR Reading and Math to Ames Web, is a way to progress monitor, really get a pulse on our interventions that we use to support students. The standardized testing, I believe you're referring to 3 through 8 math, ELA, science. And then as you get into the secondary schools, you're talking about our testing that goes across all the subjects. So they are still very much a big part of what we do to get a handle on what our students need to be successful. Can parents opt out of them? Yes, at the 3 through 8 category, they can. And that is communicated, families know, but we do a lot of work around helping families understand why they are important, so that the students do engage in those assessments, because it really helps us have an understanding of that next step around Ames Web and interventions we need to put in place. So they go hand in hand.
Okay, I'm all for finding where our students are versus, I guess, the state and locally. So I support all that. The other concern there was the amount of time out of the classroom to do the testing. Is it really a 5-day process where they're not really being educated, they're being tested, I guess?
So you may be speaking of over time that they take, because there are multiple assessments that our students take. There's the ELA test, and then there's the math test. And then at certain grade levels, there's a science test. And so as you add up all of that time over a course of a year, it could be approaching that amount of time, yes. But it's not all back to back.
Okay, so you need the time to do the testing, but it does take them away from day-to-day learning, I guess. Okay, I think it's required, or I think it's a good thing. The photo situation, again, I've heard this from several people. And I brought this up with the Heritage Heights PTA last night. They are allowed to, from what I understand. Don, you can confirm this. If they want to change the photographers they're using for the school pictures, they have the authority to change that as their PTAs in their
Yeah,
building.
so I apologize. I didn't respond back because I was collecting information back. But it turns out that all of our buildings use the same vendor. I'm going to go back probably in my previous role, probably 7 years or so ago, when we met collectively as a PTA council. Might have been the last year that the council was around. They did express an interest in getting one vendor across the district to aid in pricing for all schools because the pricing was all over the board. So we did that. We got them under contract for that particular year. And then when, honestly, when we transitioned into the role, the responsibility went back to the building. So Mr. Rabidold, to answer your question, the PTAs and the PTOs and PTSAs are at liberty to change the vendor if they so choose. I know that at the elementary level, the PTOs and PTA groups choose that. At the middle school level, I'm not exactly sure how that works. I think the PTSA is involved, but there is a yearbook advisor that also works with the vendor as well.
Okay, I just think if they're made aware of that, it might.
Okay, I can certainly do that. I believe that for the most part, the buildings knew it, but I can certainly reaffirm that.
That's perfect. Thanks, Don.
You're sure.
Appreciate it. I think that's all I have. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Okay.
All good, Dirk?
Yeah, all good. Thank you.
Okay. Unfinished business, we have none. Superintendent's report, Dr. Genestri?
We have two presentations for the board tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Battaglia. Our first is on where we are with AI. I know we talked about it from the beginning of the year. Actually, we started talking about it last year and coming up with some policy that will allow us to grow as AI continues to influence instruction here. And Dr. Wilson is going to present. I know Mr. Kumro is in the audience tonight as well, who's leading the efforts with our technology committee to recommend policy to the board. And we thought because it's a board goal this year that we would like to present to you where we are and get your feedback.
Good evening. So we really want to dig into AI and where we are as a district, and we have a lot going on with it. It's a good opportunity to share. So why now? Why this talk around AI? Well, I know that we all are engaging in our world, right? And there are times that you actually end up engaging with AI and you may not even know it. It has become that much involved in what we do day in and day out. So there's this rapid transformation in education and the workplace. And we really want to ensure that we remain proactive, equitable, and responsible in leveraging these tools. Our students are using them. Our teachers are engaging in them. We want to know at what level. We want to support them so that we get to the highest level. And we address some of the things that could come up as you are engaging in the use of AI. So our purpose is to empower teachers to integrate the generative AI, Gen AI, into learning while maintaining equitable access. So that Gen AI means that there's learning that the AI is doing based on what the information is out there on whatever topic you're engaging in with AI. I'll come back to that in a minute because it does add into one thing that we want to make sure we stay very close to as we engage in this work with AI. We want to provide a clear expectations and guidelines for reasonable AI use by students and staff, helping our students know when is a good time to engage in this work, helping our teachers set up assignments that make sense to help students learn their way through AI. And we want to safeguard data privacy and compliance. We always have to keep that at the forefront because we are bound by Education Law 2D. And that really is tied to that personally identification information, anything that's PII, making sure that we are engaging in the work that keeps all of that secure. And so as we dig into our AI use, we really want to make sure that taking that generative approach, that we really hone in on, and you'll see this written throughout that policy. There's a policy that's before you this month to review. That the idea that bias could be evident in that work. And so helping provide the professional development, helping our students and our teachers understand that that is there and how do they navigate that and figure out when that could be there and dig deeper when using AI. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cumro.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so just kind of giving you a bit of an overview of what you see specifically written down in this policy. Really what we're trying to do is empower our teachers to decide how they're going to use Gen AI in their own classrooms. This is really going to involve making sure that all students have equal access to AI, especially being a one-to-one district. We're going to find that a lot easier here. Students still are going to be held accountable for their work in the end. I know that's going to be a kind of a big fear amongst teachers, maybe even amongst the public, but really trying to stay upfront and really, again, as it even says in the district personal use, just trying to train our staff to know what is responsible and accountable work. When you're using AI, you always have to put it into a checker, check your accuracy and those sorts of things. So we've really designed a lot of training and some things like that that are going to come up kind of rolling through this policy.
Encouraging them to reread whatever it
Oh,
is
yeah,
that they're
correct.
submitting.
Yeah. Have you used it?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, there's a famous kind of story in the news recently. A court lawyer tried to use AI ChatGPT to generate his court case. He did this, didn't proofread it, didn't fact check, ends up, ChatGPT loves making things up, made up some fake court cases. He submitted it to a judge. Not a good look. So yeah, we need to make sure that our students understand and know how to use AI. And importantly, this policy is just that stepping stone into that, to just make sure that we have a foundation opening enough for our teachers to learn all the trainings and support that they're going to need for our students. Jay, do you mind going to the next slide? So really what we're kind of looking at here, progressing through getting this accepted, into February. We're looking to start an awareness campaign in March, really starting to kind of put out a lot of communication, making sure we're getting surveys out to teachers. We want to figure out where they're at right now, where we need to take them. So a lot of teachers probably use it, but we don't know who uses it, how much they use it, what they need to know. There's been some trainings offered, through BOCES internally as well in the use of AI. And so we've already developed some surveys to put out to our staff to figure that out. We also want to make sure we're surveying students, the community as well, to try to figure out how it's being used around, even real world applications, what the fears are in the community. And we really need to get ahead of that by starting this planning process and the trainings and making sure we're getting a lot of feedback from that. We do believe that this might expand into the student code of conduct. We're going to have to look at that through work with our technology committee, and just seeing if we do need to fine tune it to make sure that it aligns to any new policy that we're having. Excuse me. And then starting next year in the fall, we really want to make sure that teachers are prepped. If they want to use it in their classrooms, they are clear on how to do so. And really kind of going through that, we want to make sure, again, the whole process needs to be monitored, reviewed. So surveys are going to be kind of put out periodically through this process and ongoing, so we can make sure we're gathering the information back and figuring out any, problems that we should anticipate are going to arise and getting ahead of those and making sure that we're progressing and keeping up with where we need to be to keep our kids, ready for this workforce that is going to heavily involve AI use. Thank you.
Let me just ask, as you roll this out.
Yeah.
Where are parents going to figure into this? Because I think that's you mentioned community, but I think we need to be pretty specific to target our parents so that they're on board with it, just to help our kids. How are those going to piece in?
I'll jump in and I'll let Michael take over. We already have surveys queued up ready to go if you agree with the policy going into place. One is to our parents, to engage them to see what do they know about what their kids are doing, but then how do they use it at home? It could be a useful tool for parents who want to do extended work at home and they are hitting a wall with how to do that. So we want to know what they're using it for, and we have that ready to go, but is there more you want to add?
No, I think that Dr. Wilson brings up a really good point, though. Making sure that parents know that this is available, I
Mhm.
think it really plays into this. If you were to think about, I mean, you would need a teaching professional to do a lot of content writing.
Mhm.
But if you could go into ChatGPT and say, write me 3 passages at a 2nd grade level, and it will do it for you, and you know that it's accurate, and that's very powerful to use at home. And I think, yeah, extremely important that parents understand and know that we're using it and how they can actually capitalize on it as well.
Oh, I just realized we're hitting the end page here and I'm just looking down. We talked about this at the policy committee meeting with Brian and I and, a handful of us here in the room. And one of the things I stressed was making sure, and you've talked about it, making sure people understand you need to fact check your information. I brought up the example, which I thought I still had on my phone, but I don't, is I was looking for populations of a few states. I looked up the population in New York and it was using Gemini, which is a Google product. And then when I went back and started looking a little further in the information it gave me, it started telling me, okay, the population in New York was like 19.8 million. And then it said, it listed like the population in New York City is like 19.2 million. I'm like, no, because Erie County has about 1 million people, Monroe County has about, these things don't add up. And the question is, do people recognize when they don't add up, is my concern. And I think that's something we need to stress when we get into it. The other part, and Brian and I agreed as we were doing the policy on this, is we wouldn't recommend this policy. We wanted the board to discuss it rather than just us saying, okay, this is a good one from the policy committee. So we wanted to make sure you guys all had time to think about that before we voted yes or no. I don't know, Brian, do you want to add anything else to that?
No,
What
I think you summarized it well.
I think that, I've been using AI in my day job and, working with it with students and such. It's important to make sure that faculty knows that, it is well within your right to say, you can't use it on this assignment, or you can use it on this assignment, but you have to tell me you're using it. My favorite story that comes out of my day job is, about the Trojan horse, and that, if you don't reread, you could have copy and pasted that Trojan horse and you're supposed to be writing about, the color of leaves, and now you're talking about elephants because that's where the Trojan horse went. And, you have to be careful. It can be very dangerous, but you have to also be very clear and concise as what you're looking for, and always make sure you reread it. Because if you don't reread it, you could be way out in left field.
The one thing I will add, just on a professional level, that I think is important for the students to understand, is that there are now, I can tell you, in the accounting profession, in the legal profession, that there are standards being developed, and I would imagine in a lot of other professions, in most companies now are saying, you have to be careful. This is not a substitute for your professional knowledge and advice and so on and so forth. So I think that emphasizes to our students who are, being trained for the workforce, that, the importance that that firms are out there now, recognizing this. I mean, I guess I'd rather see somebody get burned in school than on a professional level, because all it takes is one time to really get embarrassed by it. And then you remember it for life, that how important it is to, double check things and do your own work.
Another one I wanted to bring up, and you guys mentioned it too, was the policy itself, which is in here. I asked, and this policy was provided by our policy service through everyone BOCES, and we made a few tweaks as we went along on it. When I went to the NYSBA conference in New York back in October, I talked with some people from Erie One Policy Services while we were there, and they did mention that they had that policy. They also stressed to me that they strongly believe that it should also fall under our code of conduct, which you guys touched on. So I appreciate that. And I think that's something we need to make sure it happens whatever committees it comes through as we go along. I think we also, DEI is gonna be talking about
Yes.
next meeting, right? If I
Yes,
remember
next
right.
meeting, yep.
Yeah, so
Tomorrow.
I think it needs to be attacked from a couple different directions, but I think that's very important too, that we include it there and make sure we get it right. Plus, I went to probably at least 5 different sessions that were AI, and almost all of them said the same thing, it said, some didn't even think you needed a policy as long as you put it in your code of conduct. Others were, it was back and forth between there, but they all pretty much stressed that it had to be part of our code of conduct too.
We're looking at taking our code of conduct and really putting that DEI lens on it. So we're in the middle of that work right now, as you mentioned. And part of the work will be to include the language around AI. Mr. Cumrow has already worked to collect different ways to look at how that could play out in a code of conduct. We will decide as a committee. There's another committee that also will be engaged in this work, our professional learning committee. Because we really have to engage in that conversation around professional development. So there's a huge implementation plan that Mr. Cumrow has developed and will be ready to lead right out of the gate if the policy is approved. The original policy itself was reviewed by the technology committee, which he leads. But it includes district administrators, school administrators, teachers, community members.
I have a question for you. Sorry, who creates the training for students or for staff or for parents or whoever is going to be receiving it?
Yeah, so we already have some developed internally by our technology coaches. But really a lot of these are also found kind of going around here. When BOCES offers trainings for AI. Some are going to be developed internally, but others we can look externally if we need something like that. But various kind of sources.
Can you go through the teacher center to
Yes.
arrange some of these?
Yes, that's how it's being, that's how it is being made available to staff now. We also have planned Superintendent's Conference Day if we are given the green light. Michael is going to be leading, Mr. Cumrow is going to be leading a session with staff around the work that the technology committee did, which is that high level of understanding of AI to make sure that we all enter our thinking around AI at the same level. We all engage with the same language and the same understanding, the same definitions.
Is this all leading to creating a policy, or are you referencing the policy we have I think it's our first reading tonight?
We are referencing the
Is one of-
policy you have in front of you, yes.
Okay. Okay, can we put that on the screen? Is it in this report? I don't know if it's in the.
It's in your packet.
The first read. The agenda.
Well, I know it's on the agenda, but I want you to read it because I don't know how this ties into what you're talking about tonight. The first reading of the AI policy that was reviewed by
Yeah,
the.
it's several pages.
You can read it if you want.
I
I don't know if it's several pages.
This is just this, it's missing a piece.
No,
Tell me
It-
that.
Going to the board
I know,
packet.
Find it? Under
We have time
January.
to really read through this, digest it, listen to
Because you
what you've
tabled
said
it.
today. Right. So
Yes.
it's only the first reading.
It's the first reading and I believe you table it for this month. And so you have the month. And then we come back to it next month. Right? Okay.
The first readings, it is a 34-page document.
Where do you see a 34-page document? All I see
So when you go into the board packet,
The whole.
Under
package.
down below.
4 pages.
Yeah. Where it says revised policies, first reading, open that up and the AI is the first policy in there. After you see the 4 or 5 pages of description of what we looked at this month. Yeah, that stuff. Policy itself is like 4 pages.
Size 4 font.
There.
I'm looking for it. I still don't see it.
it's on the screen.
Going far enough.
There we go. I got it. Okay. It's down below. All right, the summary there didn't look like much of anything. That's why I asked.
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
The definitions and
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Our second presentation for the night is regarding start and stop times for next year, for the 25-26 school year. I have the pleasure of being joined by Mr. Kennedy, our Director of Transportation, and wanted to update the board on the work of the Building Use Committee. First of all, say thank you to all the members. We have our elementary principals, our middle school principal sitting in on it. We have two parents, a teacher representative, two board members that sit on it, and district office that sit on it as well. And we've done a lot of work this year, knowing that start and stop times were going to change when we announced last year the adoption of the teacher contract. In the new teacher contract, it requires us to adopt 15 more minutes of instructional time for every student at Sweet Home in the 25 and 26 school year. So we knew the transportation times were going to change, start and stop times were going to change. And we also knew that my presentation would go off the screen and not work the entire time. Oh,
Amy, you got jokes?
No. Correct.
hopefully it comes back. Hold on. I don't know. Virgil's Apple TV, right? There it is. Okay. So that is one thing that made us look at start and stop times. We also know that our driver shortage continues at crisis levels in the district. And we are, for every 2-3 drivers we gain, we lose 2 or 3 more due to retirements. And so while we've gained a few, we're still at the same levels we were 3.5 years ago with when I came to the district, and we have about 700 more students now. Our bus runs, as many of our public know and the board knows, it's been a struggle this year. Scott and his team have done a great job of condensing the times and making sure that we're not late for school. But with the staggered elementary times, which I'll talk about in a minute, that posed challenges. While it saved us some drivers, it posed some challenges for us as well. So we are going to recommend some wholesale changes, some big changes as a committee that include a change in the structure of our runs. So this proposal will include that the high school and the middle school have similar bell schedules. It'll be off about 15 minutes. And I think, I've talked about it, whether in the Amherst Bee or in our newsletter, that this was a thing that we were really hoping that middle school would have more opportunities for extracurriculars, after school programming. More teachers will be available for that as well. So I'll get into that in a minute. The other change that we're proposing is that grades 6 through 12 will ride the bus together to and from school on the same run to fill our buses up in the morning and in the afternoon. Since 6 through 12 have similar stops, we found it advantageous to have them ride the bus together. In our communications with our PTAs and PTOs, that question came up of some concern. However, we believe that our older students serve as peers for our younger students. And really the issues that we've seen on the buses are middle school, no surprise there. So we believe that this will help our middle school students on the bus. So we're going to propose that the runs fall in this following order: the high school, the middle school, and then all 4 elementary schools would be on the same schedule. While I said before, the staggered times that we are experiencing now did have its benefits as in terms of freeing up drivers for other things like after school that we were able to bring back. It posed other issues especially with the elementary run being in the middle of the day. One parent not home to greet their child throws that run off, and would also throw the middle school off as well, because the middle school happened after the elementary buses. So, and finally, we're recommending a walking radius. Right now, there is door-to-door pickup, no matter how close you live to an elementary building. And we would like to propose a walking radius of 0.25 miles that would free up one bus run per elementary building for a total of 4 bus runs. That would give us leeway, because right now we have mechanics driving, we have front office staff driving, and that hopefully will free them up to do their mechanic work and front office work, while we have dedicated drivers on the road. And Scott, feel free to, if.
You're doing great.
All right, we're rolling. All right. All right. This is good. So some potential benefits of the middle school change in particular. Middle school students would have more time in the afternoon to participate in extracurricular activities. Middle school students could also be home in the afternoon to care for their younger siblings. More middle school teachers could host extracurricular activities. Right now, we have very few middle school teachers able to coach like a varsity or junior varsity sport, because the high school gets out at 2 o'clock. It also should note that we have the latest middle school day in Western New York with around a 4 o'clock dismissal. So, Sweet Home has that long day, and it really limits opportunities in the afternoon. This change would also bring us, the elementary run as the last run of the day and all on one schedule will help eliminate delays. I think the elementary principals are very happy that they could go back on one schedule and not a staggered schedule any longer. It would also free up PD in the afternoon, where our elementary teachers from multiple buildings could get together, because now they'd be on the same schedule. We would get closer to our goal of reestablishing after-school runs at pre-COVID levels. We believe that we can bring back after-school runs 4 days a week, and multiple buses taking kids to different parts of the district. So they're not on the bus for a long period of time. And one of our goals as a building use committee was to have little impact on what the current elementary schedule is, so parents wouldn't have to change their workday that dramatically. And that was a goal, and I really appreciate Scott's work there to crunch the numbers and come up with a recommendation that we believe falls right in the middle of where our elementary times are right now for elementary 1 and 2. So here is our proposal. This was seen today by the Building Use Committee and seen first by the board and now our public. So currently on the left column, you will see that these are the 24-25 start times. We are proposing that we go from 4 runs to 3, and that the middle school be the second run. So 6 through 12 would be picked up. They would be dropped off at the high school for a 7:19 instructional start time, and they would end their day at 2:05. After, let's go back to the morning. They'd be dropped off, and then the middle school would then be dropped off. They'd be on the bus at the high school, then they would go to the middle school for an instructional start time at 7:40. The middle school day would end at 2:24 for our students. And then the elementary would start at 8:55 and depart. The instruction would end at 3:10, but students get their coats on, pack their bags, that's our sort of thing. Take 5 minutes to do that, and they would depart the building at 3:15. So some notes here that we wanted to make you aware of. It's a pretty simple change at the high school. We would go and middle school, we'd go from a 40-minute period to a 42-minute period to accommodate that 15 minutes of extra instruction. And honestly, because there's 9 periods at both buildings, our students will be getting 18 minutes of instruction in addition at the middle school and the high school, which is a very good thing. The elementary schedule, we would enhance our ELA math and social and emotional learning there. Right now, from our principals have reported teachers are running out of time. They could use this extra 15 minutes to enhance those 3 areas. The high school, middle school teacher contact time for students goes from 6:29 to 6:44. 6 hours and 44 minutes, which puts us well over the minimum minutes that students need to be in class throughout a year. Our state aid is tied to those required minutes. So we feel like we're in a good spot now. Right now, we only have about 3 hours, I think, three minutes or 3 hours of wiggle room in the schedule. This would put us way over the requirement.
3 minutes.
Elementary teacher contact time would go from 6 hours and 15 minutes to 6:30. And the teacher length of day already is at 7 hours and 15 minutes at all schools, but wanted to reiterate that this schedule fits into those parameters that were set through either the teacher contract or by the building use committee. So we believe that there are a lot of positives that come out of this proposal. And we believe it's really going to benefit our middle school students due to the fact that they will have everything from the musical to sporting activities to clubs. Elementary band is also very something that we've wrestled with because of the staggered schedule. Now that the elementaries will be on one schedule, that will give us collaboration time between the 4 buildings for elementary band. So that's going to get back to what it was prior to the staggered schedule. And then we're going to free up drivers for afternoon runs. And we're really, really excited about that as well. So I think that's where we're at with the proposal for the start and stop times. We wanted to give, just for communication purposes, I've mentioned it in the Amherst Bee. I wrote about it in the newsletter. We have done the tour of PTO, PTA meetings. We've been to every one of our buildings to talk about this with our parents as well. And I know many of our board members were at those meetings, but the reception seemed overall positive for sure. And, our middle school families that were there that night at the PTO meeting, I got a lot of positive feedback from them as well, because they do feel it's a late afternoon dismissal. So I think I covered everything. And
You got it.
all right, with that said, I'd open up for comments, feedback. I think what we'd like to do is, if you're okay with this, obviously this is public and we published these times tonight. We'd like to send it out in some communications this week, and then invite anybody to the board meeting next week or in February for comment period, so they have time to mull it. But I believe our community has been well informed that these changes were coming. This is the first time they're seeing the times. And it was really important that the elementary time not have a major shift, because we know those are our youngest students. Parents have to rearrange their work schedules. And we wanted to make sure that we took that into consideration.
If I could just also add to this model, if we go forward with this model, as you know, we spend a significant amount of money on contracted transportation, in large part because of our shortage of drivers. But what we'll do is we'll go to work. When I say we, Scott will go to work, and we'll start to kind of plan out kind of how runs will look. And then we'll get a sense of how many runs that we'll need to continue to contract out, and look at things that we might be able to take back as well. Scott and his team have been doing a great job as we've been getting drivers to try and take back some of those things. But it's much like, when we lose a driver to retirement, or lose 2 drivers to retirement and only hire 1, for every run that we take back, we seemingly get added another run because of our McKinney-Vento kiddos. So the goal is then, once all this kind of comes out in the wash, that we would look at our overall contracted transportation and go back out and rebid to see how we can do and improve some of those costs to the district as well, because it's a big expense and it continues to grow, and it's making life difficult in the business office.
Is there a way you can use AI to help form these efficient routes that you'll be looking at?
The app,
Our
right?
software that we use, sorry, should probably.
Come on up.
Okay.
The software that we use does have predicted functions within it. I don't know if it classifies as AI, but there is efficiency built into the system that we can click a button and it does maximize our route.
I have two things. Is it possible to get an overlay map of each of the elementary buildings with the 0.25 mile radius circled on, just so we can get an idea of
Yes.
where kids would be walking from? Okay, thank you. And the second thing is, I will say, as a middle school parent of a child who plays high school athletics, putting those back and near each other, we were picking up my daughter at least 3 times a week early so that she could either make a bus or not miss more than an hour of practice every day. I'm sure it would change not only for athletics, but also for plays and other activities like that. But I know there's a lot of middle school athletes that play junior varsity and varsity. And they're either, if you get out the middle school at 3:50, is that the time, 3:45, and the bus is leaving at 4 o'clock for an event, there's no way other than a parent getting a kid out of school early to get there. Or practices start at 2 o'clock and you're there for 25, 30 minutes of a practice. So
Yes, I actually, I'll be running into this Friday where I'll have to pull my son out of school to make a junior varsity game on Friday. Because he's at the middle school.
So are we, is it in the cards here to have, I know it's going to go high school pickup and then middle school pickup. Is it in the cards to have a bus that's going to go from the middle school to the high school for those reasons?
Oh, for extracurricular.
Oh, yeah.
For extracurriculars?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other, we had a parent at the building use committee also bring up the musical. His, I think, daughter
Daughter.
is not getting home till 9 o'clock because the middle school musical practice couldn't start till 4:30. So yeah, I think that was another parent we heard from at the PTA meeting at the middle school last week. I had 2 parents pull me aside and, you know, say thank you because of the late, if you're doing anything after school, it's a late night for middle schoolers.
And will you, once you figure out that 1/4 mile radius, will you send something individually to families so that they know that, how will that be handled?
Yep,
Yep.
we'll work on that. If you're okay with us moving forward, we'll work on that and inform the families that will be impacted by it. You know, we're thinking about them a lot, but we're at a point where you know, that door-to-door pickup, if we can free up a couple things. It's unusual to have door-to-door pickup even with no walking radius around a school. It's
Parents
unusual.
always have the option of driving their
They can
kids.
drive,
So
yeah.
that's, you know.
Yep.
that's-
Mrs. Jason, we'd more than likely make that notification home to those walkers probably twice. Once now, and then once again when we
it's
notify
closer.
Over summer.
students of their buses for summertime. Or lack
As
thereof.
a member of the Building Use Committee, I particularly want to thank Scott because I know you put a lot of hours into this. We talked about it after the meeting today. But this is, over the last couple of meetings, we've kicked around a couple different iterations. And I think the one that we had at the previous meeting, I wasn't happy with. I just didn't think it was going to fly. And I'm glad you were able to come up with this. I'm personally very happy with the way this one's going to work out, I think. And you get my blessing to go ahead and move forward on it for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I can't thank Scott enough, and he's been on it since moment one when we started tossing it around last year, actually.
We
I-
appreciate you.
Go ahead. Couple of things I wanted to ask. I appreciate everybody's hard work with this. One thing I think it's important though for the public to know that we're looking at both sides, the challenges or so maybe some of the downsides of some of the changes. But before I get to that, question I have is the middle school. What I'm wondering is, it looks like if I'm looking at this correctly, there's about an hour and 15 minutes between the middle school start time, which is the later between the high school and middle school, and then the elementary start time. So just curious as to why that seems like a decent gap.
You ready? Okay. So the three things that go into routing a school bus are geography, the capacity of the bus, and the amount of time available to get where we have to get. We are looking at bringing back all 4 elementary schools on the same schedule. It's going to require loading our buses as heavy as we can load them in order to accommodate that, which is going to take more time. So we're going to need that time in the mornings to get them on the bus. And then at the end of the day, because they are the last ones, that will give us that cushion that we did not have when the middle school was after that.
Okay.
So we're hoping that that's going to solve our problems.
And further, sorry, Scott, I think it was the goal of the committee not to shake up the elementary schedule too much. We wanted to stay as close as to where we were in this current calendar year. And that timeframe, that 8:55 timeframe, is kind of right in the middle of elementary 1 and elementary 2 this year.
Okay.
Following up on that, Scott, I think you're still planning on the door-to-door pickup for the kids in the elementary school beyond that quarter
That
mile
hasn't
range,
changed.
which
That has not
obviously that
changed.
takes
Yes,
longer than the
that's
quarter
correct.
mile or half a mile down the street that they're walking.
And then if the high school and middle school run, let's say that group was, I'm just asking if this is a possibility. I'm just, so I know for my own knowledge, could they be swapped? In other words, elementary does the timing, starts at the 7:30, 7:40, 7, whatever, that time, and then high school and middle school, you just swap the 2 groups around. Or are there, outside of the parents being home and that, I'm just saying from a transportation perspective, or is there more behind the scenes? I mean, I think, that would be a question parents are asking, like, why can't we just do the elementary first, all the elementary first, in the high school and middle school later? Is it as simple as like, that we've got X amount of time on the high school, middle school buses, we've got X amount of time on the elementary, we could take those blocks and just literally move them? Or is that too simplistic?
Well, it's an awesome thought. With high school and middle school, we do corner pickups. It is far more streamlined than doing door-to-door pickups. The 7:19 start for high school means that our bus drivers will probably be on the road between 20 after 6 and 6:30 in the morning in order to get all of the students picked up. To do elementary door-to-door, we would start picking up probably as early as 6 o'clock in the morning or that 6:10 in the morning for elementary start at 7:19.
Okay.
So I don't think it's feasible to be asking parents to do
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think that's very important, right? Because there is this, I think, in again, a simplistic world, people thinking, well, I think it's easier, the high school and middle school kids they need more sleep, or and that's the other piece I want to get to in a minute, but that's a significant, 6 a.m. is what you're saying, right? Potentially
The
for
drivers
some,
would probably start their runs at 6 a.m. with
some elementary kids. That's an early start. And where you're saying where the high school and middle school, because they don't have to go door to door, they can actually push that out a little bit further. Sounds like, if I'm understanding that correctly.
I'm sorry, ask.
It sounds like what you're saying is that because the elementary and schools are like door to door, whereas the high school, middle school are a point where they're being picked up.
Correct.
That allows you to push out that pickup time a little bit more on the early end.
Correct. Yeah.
Than you would with
the corner
elementary.
stops for high school. Everyone has to be at the corner.
Okay.
Stopping every driveway or every other driveway adds a lot more time to the overall run.
Yeah. And, you know, I know that a question I've gotten is Williamsville is starting, you know, they were actually starting later in, you know, they've gone through this initiative. And again, I think it's important that we just mention this from a public perspective, because I will say this is concerning. I you know, am leaning towards supporting this, but I will say I wish there was a way logistically we could get our middle school and high school start times later, because, you know, for instance, California, they're now mandated an 8:30. I believe it's 8:30 or later for middle school and high school, because I believe and I think the National Institute of Health has published some information. You know, there's some studies out there that have indicated a lot of health benefits. I'm just wondering if the Building Use Committee at least explore the health and emotional benefits, because, you know, I've read a study that it was like a 9% improvement in graduation rate, because in one of the studies said because of the kids are getting more sleep. And again, my understanding is that the way adolescents sleep is different than the way younger kids sleep. So it's not just, one group's getting up earlier than the other and it's a wash. You know, it's more that literally, like, there's a difference in the way high school kids and sleep and develop versus, you know, the grade. So, you know, I understand we're limited by resources and our ability, but I also guess I want to understand from the Building Use Committee if, you know, some of those studies and those other pieces were looked at, because, I mean, these are coming out from, you know, organizations that are pretty reputable. Like I say, the CDC, National Institute of Health. You know, you can just do a Google search and there's a lot of studies out there. And I do understand there are some, you know, the other side of it, but it seems like more of the evidence is pointing towards, from a health perspective, a potential benefit towards later start times. I mean, I couldn't see California starting at 8:30.
It did come up. That was a concern, no question, that it's early. I think we ran it through the building use and we also ran it through the athletic committee. When you start dismissing a high school at 3:10, 3:30 because our elementary runs take so long, you run into sports issues, you run into athletic contests that could start early, or buses getting on the road to travel to athletic contests. So that 3 o'clock, 3:10, 3:30 dismissal for the high school was a major concern for the committee and for athletic use. It came up in as well. So that was definitely discussed. And I think the Williamsville example, their entire district is contracted transportation, so they can start every building at the same time if they wanted to. I don't know exactly what their start times are, but they have a lot more flexibility with their schedule because it's all contracted through them. So we can't start the high school, the middle school, and the elementary at the same time.
So just to piggyback off what Dr. Genestri said, I've sat on the Building Use Committee for its entirety at this point, with the exception of the last couple months that I was out. We've talked extensively about that last year, or 2 years, not last year, the year before. We did speak about that a lot in terms of the health and wellness of our high school students. What we found was, from a parent's perspective, as much as that extra sleep and diligence would be nice for our high school students, wouldn't take advantage of it, having a high school student, I know that for a fact. But also, it puts our elementary families into a little bit more of a pickle in that if you have a high schooler that's getting your elementary student off the bus or on the bus or whatever, it doesn't allow for that anymore. So now if you allow our elementary students to be out at 2 or 2:30, now you need coverage earlier to cover your kids, whereas in the past, your older kids were able to do it. So we've kind of run the gamut on a lot of those situations. So we did talk a lot about some of those things. I'm aware of the studies that you, because I think I was the one even that brought it up, and that, they say that kids perform better if they have more sleep. And then I'm kindly reminded of our COVID times. A little bit of background in some of the situations that I was a witness to, in a child that had medical reasons for needing to get sleep between certain hours. COVID hit, and then those hours weren't accommodated because they didn't have to. There was no reason to get up. They got up because class didn't start till 9 o'clock, so they got up at 9 o'clock. They didn't get up at 6 to get off to school, and so things get really screwed up. What I found was, even with my own kids, lights out at 10, 1 o'clock, I'm still hearing them giggling with their friends, like, what's going on? And you go in and they're like, well, I don't have to get up because I don't have class until 10, 11, whatever. And it being parents that had to work made it very hard to navigate during that time. So when I say even my own kids wouldn't benefit from that, they would benefit from that, but they wouldn't take advantage of it.
I will attest to that. As a parent of a high school senior who has late arrival, so his start time is 8:15, I believe. So that's an hour later. He's up an hour later. He's not getting an extra hour's sleep.
Yeah, he's not going to bed any earlier. That's how my kid is too.
So
And so the only thing I would say is my reading of these studies have indicated that it's not necessarily the time, it's the way they sleep. It's a circadian rhythm that they're saying is
Right.
different. It's later for, that's later for adolescents. I appreciate, and I don't, deny what you're saying in terms of, it's just, these are professional studies done by organizations. I think it's important, at least as a board, that we acknowledge that that's something we've considered in this process, because a lot of parents, I think, will, bring these things up. I mean, I've had some questions. So I would just ask that, I get the logistics of it. I think what I would hope is that we continue to monitor and look at that as, as things change I'm fine with the elementaries where they are and in the way that work. It's more concerning about the high school and the middle school, that they're early. And if at any point in time, there's options that can push that out 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think there could be some benefit. The last thing I want to ask is when I was in high school, it was like a mile. Yeah, I went to Buffalo Public, though I don't know if they've changed, but you had to be a mile away, but at least in high school, before you could get busing. And I remember that took me like 20 minutes to walk. So a half mile, I'm thinking, is probably a 10-minute walk, right? I'm just wondering, we're saying 0.25, what's the determination of 0.25 versus a half a mile? I don't know that there's a big difference, but I'm wondering, could we get quite a bit more out of it?
We just weren't sure we could get more out of it. Maybe it was another bus that we could save. But we knew with 0.25, we could at least save one per building. I don't know if you want, am I saying that right, or?
You are. The quarter mile is what we ask all of our middle school and high school students to walk to a bus stop already. So we decided to stick with, or look at what that would impact our runs. The half mile, we wanted to stay as equal, I guess, as possible with all of our schools and try to give everybody that same walking distance. To do a half mile would save an additional bus per school, perhaps.
Yeah, I just think, again, if we're kind of going in this direction, we're kind of peeling off the Band-Aid. It may be better to say, hey, we're going to a half mile. We're going to now get 4 more buses or whatever it might be, because a half mile is what, 10-minute walk? I mean, it seems reasonable. It doesn't seem unreasonable, versus a 5-minute walk. I mean, and everybody's a little bit different, how fast they can walk in the winter and whatnot. But, just, again, I do have confidence in the committee and in our administrators, but I think these things are just important, at least publicly, to bring up, because this is impactful in a meaningful way. I mean, it impacts every kid, what time they get up, what time they got to go to school, what time they're getting out. It impacts the teachers, what time they're starting. And it impacts the parents.
I appreciate the balancing act. I think, we're trying to do one of these, and I appreciate what you said, Brian, about the start times and the kids, sleep health. But I think being able to participate in the sports is going to help their mental health for that part of it. So again, it's just that balancing act. I think you've done a great job looking at everything to try and, you're not going to make everybody happy, that's for sure. But I think we're doing the best we can with the information we have right now.
Yeah, I'd like to add to the balancing act piece. When you talk about secondary school students, the big things that bring them to school that help them stay connected are the extracurriculars, right? The sports, the clubs, the plays, the musicals, the concerts. One thing that is being talked about here is that California as a state has made this across the entire state. I think that's the difference here. We don't have a region or even like our state who has made that shift. Making that shift and being one of only, the only district, or maybe one of one more district in the area, would lock our kids out of those other opportunities. So there's a lot of research out there too about those extracurriculars and those being really important for secondary schools in particular. So I think, again, the balancing act, and I think that's the difference between California and New York right now. That regional shift allows them to shift all the sports to that time. So
I won't tell my 2-mile story like I did last night.
It was great last night. We heard it.
I did have to walk to school from, I was just under 2 miles, so there was no bus for me to Kenmore East. But anyways, the side benefit is, what I heard last night was possibly the older students home to let the elementary student in. Now, that doesn't always apply because a lot of the high school and middle school students are extracurricular type kids. But again, it's a good possibility if I understood it right. And, the other thing here, and this is a tough question, I guess, is at what point do we make a decision that maybe we have to go all contracted? I mean, why can't we recruit bus drivers in our current arrangement? We don't have the money in the budget. Is there an answer to that?
We've done it all. We've talked about it all as a committee. A couple years ago, we had extremely competitive rates. Right now, we're falling behind in our rates, and that's something that we have to look at. But a couple years ago, we had and the doors did not flood open with drivers. It's a shortage that exists throughout the state and throughout the country, really, and that we're experiencing. The rates are changing. The salary rates are changing constantly, and we've actually, that's our next meeting to talk about where are we competitively with the rest of the region. And so it's just, the price is going to continue to go up. And as the demand continues to rise and the supply continues to fall, we're faced with that situation.
As far as contracting, we just built a really big building over there and spent lots on that.
I know that's why it's a tough question, but
Dirk, just to kind of further on that a little bit too, Scott, what I'll say is just, in my seat across the district, to Dr. Genestri's point, it's not an issue that is just pertinent to Sweet Home. It's everywhere. And quite frankly, I think that our district, in terms of positioning of drivers and the number of drivers that we have, we're probably better off than many districts already, than many districts are. Some of the challenges for hiring, the aggregate age of our bus drivers is such that, more retire than we're able to hire. And it's some of that is starting to change a little bit, I think, from that standpoint. So it's just, it's unfortunate that we can't get ahead of the game more so than anything else. But what I will say in terms of contracting transportation, we operate a hybrid model now. And this is just a rough estimate. I would say, based upon what we spend both between contracted transportation now and our in-house transportation, that if we were to go to full contracted transportation, our transportation costs would triple.
Along with a loss of control over.
How
Yeah.
does Williamsville get away with it? They just have a bigger budget schedule?
They might,
They
they
get more-
might. I mean, it's, that's something that we're gonna have to, obviously, I don't think we're at that point now.
Okay.
Because I think that we are doing a good job and we've starting to get back the drivers from that standpoint. But
But Williamsville doesn't own their fleet and,
Williamsville does not own their fleet.
Contracted, right?
and they haven't for many, many, many years.
That's correct.
So, the money we have
Yeah.
invested,
Okay. I'm just curious, how do these contracted companies, how do they attract? I guess that's the question.
So I mean, just our, Scott, if you can chime in here too, but
I should have read it today.
our starting bus driver salary is $24.
22.84 an hour for a
$22.84.
starting bus driver.
And contracted transportations are offering 32
to
bucks.
$34 an hour with a $5,000 signing bonus right now.
And the district then assumes that costs.
Does the state have any help there? Is that?
Well, we get aid back. It's back on the back end of it. So any dollar that we spend in terms of transportation, we get, 66 cents on the dollar, but still, it's just, I don't know, without looking at a fully contracted model, I'm guessing, based upon what I know we spend for the small amount of contracted runs that we do now, it's a cost that is exorbitant. It's exorbitant.
additionally, if you follow some of the stories that are out there about the transportation, labor drought, we'll call it. Even our contracted companies are feeling the need for drivers and the need for hires. They're not even fully staffed. They try to be, but from what I've heard, they're not fully staffed either. I don't know if you know anything about that, Scott, but
I do. I know that we have experienced that ourselves in as much as they arrive late to schools. There have been times where they call and say they do not have drivers available to do the work. They have the same criteria that we have. However, as a private entity, they can make different arrangements for their drivers than we can. Contracted drivers, contract services actually put their employees on unemployment during the summer or during a week off. We don't do that here. That's advantageous for people that need the money or want to, go for the top dollar. We don't offer that here. We offer other benefits within our district that keeps our drivers and attracts drivers to us. There's two different models.
I got it.
so if you know anybody looking for to spend some time with
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah,
we
trust
could
me,
use some
I don't want you
drivers.
to get
Yeah.
rid of the bus.
All I need is a name.
I just
Take it from there.
I wanted to go on record here, like it's just for what 5 years ago, when I started in this job, we had close to 100 bus drivers. We have 57 now, give or
A
take.
total of 68,
But that
including all
include-
of our mechanics and all of our office staff.
Straight bus drive,
Able to drive.
yeah, straight. This is my job, bus driver, 57, 58. We have continued to keep the same level of service that we did when we had 100 bus drivers. So what his team is doing is honestly second to none.
Good.
And I cannot appreciate what they've done, what they continue to do for our kids in times when it's become extremely difficult. So
With,
I-
with 700 more students
Right.
in the district, which is unheard of.
right. So I think that this will be a huge advantage to us for a number of reasons, to be able to kind of further enhance opportunities for our kids. And continue to do the great work that Scott and his team do.
So I just want to add this because it's brought up about the extracurriculars and the sports, and I do 100% support that we need to have our kids, that those opportunities for them. But I will just mention that Amherst High School ends at 322. Williamsville, I think, is proposing 340. So and because I know I'm going to get these questions, is if they can end late,
I can't.
why, and again, I understand the logistics. That's probably the reason more than anything is logistically. But I am saying, I want to just publicly acknowledge that, I think it is there, we had mentioned that, getting involved in the sports and the activities would be, somewhat challenging getting out later. Well, our neighbors are doing it, so, and those are times later than what the elementary is at 3:10, I think we're saying. So this is, I just want to mention that because again, I think, it's worth noting that we're at least thinking about that. And at least for the other board members to understand that, there are schools out there getting out later. But I think more than anything, it sounds like this is more of a logistics and issue and challenge.
Those, and Amherst and Williamsville both contract, and so they could run their elementaries at the same time as their high school if they wanted to. We just can't do that here because of the number of drivers.
Right, yeah. So it comes down to logistics. It seems like more than
And
anything.
equipment. Yeah,
And equipment. right,
yeah.
exactly.
We don't have enough buses to do all of them.
At the same time.
Okay. That's enough said. I think there's a trade-off here, right? What may impact students in one way so that we have enough transportation services. I understand where you're going with it, and I understand what you did. But again, I think as Brian's saying, there is an impact.
And I want
We
to,
are going to hear about it from other
Yeah.
parents.
and it was absolutely 100% discussed, debated, in building use and athletics. Talked about it as well.
No, check it. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
I'll just quickly go through. I just wanted to share as well, we have awesome news. Heritage Heights has been named a Leader in Me Lighthouse School. We were able to capture, hopefully this works. Oh, you can't hear it. Darn it. But anyway, that's Mr. Perry announcing to the school that they were designated as a lighthouse school. Now all 4 elementary buildings are lighthouse schools, Leader in Me. It's an extensive process. It's a site review by the Leader in Me team that comes into Heritage Heights and does interviews students, teachers, administrators, parents. And we could not be more proud of the work that's happened at Heritage Heights over the past 2.5, 3 years to get them to this moment. So just congratulations to everyone at Heritage Heights for this awesome achievement. And they will be here in February. I think Mr. Perry will be here in February to tell you more about getting there. So we're super excited for him and just want to congratulate the entire Heritage Heights community.
Can I just say that at our PTA meeting, Mr. Ryan mentioned that May 14th was the Lighthouse Review for Maplemere.
Yes.
So it's full cycle.
Yes,
It's up next,
yes. We appreciate the board's commitment to Leader in Me. You know, as you see at Leadership Days, what the impact this program has on our students is just incredible from a confidence standpoint, public speaking standpoint, advocacy for themselves standpoint. Just, you know, I know all of you have attended a Leadership Day. They are some of the best days that we have in our district, and because it's full kids on display. I also should note that this was the first year that all the buildings did student-led parent-teacher conferences this year, and all indications are that they were successful. So just the Leader in Me program has been very beneficial for us, and with your support, we're going to keep it going. They're doing a lot of work at the middle school and high school as well, and we're going to see if we can get Leader in Me district status coming soon. So that's a goal of ours. As we announced last week, and I told all the PTAs this as well, that our Panther logo contest is in full swing. Kids, if you're out there watching a board meeting tonight, I'm sure we would love your submission. No?
The deadline for turning in their pig papers was
Is the
last week.
31st.
Who I thought it was last week, so they don't.
Oh, was it? I thought it
To
was.
watch
No,
Oh.
the participation.
the
government.
participation.
Oh, yeah,
yes. Was due last week, so I doubt anyone's watching tonight.
Oh, sorry, that was
They're
a poor
killing me.
reaction on my part.
I tried. So if you are out there, or if you're a parent watching tonight and your kid, and your child has some artistic ability or no artistic ability, but wants to be part of this great contest, please have them work with their art teacher to submit. Each building will have a finalist in the top 10, and we're going to ask our community to vote May 20th. Students, parents, all residents will be allowed to vote. So it's going to be an exciting day, and I always end it by saying that anybody who wants to have a voice in what our Panther logo is going to be has the opportunity to express themselves either through a submission or through a vote.
So there is no restriction on how many kids from any building that want to
Nope.
participate, they can participate.
They can participate, and their building will vote on the finalist.
Finalists,
Yep.
each building.
That vote
gets-
is February 14th at the buildings.
Okay.
And then we're going to work with a graphic artist on the final 10. So the high school will have 3 in the top 10, the middle school will have 3 in the top 10, and each elementary building will have 1 in the top 10.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you.
Music Fest is back. I announced it, we announced it a while ago, but February 2nd, 12:30 to 4:15. I know the music department sent out a schedule to families this week. And so we are on schedule. Very happy that the music department is working so hard to bring this tradition back to Sweet Home, and to have it at the UB Center of Arts is a deserving place to showcase the great work of our students and their teachers. So we're excited. Please be there February 2nd. It's the week between the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl, so no football that day, and it promises to be a wonderful event that showcases the musical talents of our kids. And then finally, with sadness, we wanted to let our community know that a Panther through and through has passed way too soon. So Lori Caccianetti was an incredible volunteer here at Sweet Home. She had 2 daughters that went through the district, and when they graduated, when was the last one graduated 5 years ago? She continued to stay on and a ginormous roles in Dollars for Scholars and the PTA here at Sweet Home. She was the executive secretary or executive assistant to Darren Brown Hall at Williamsville. So her familiarity with the schools and education was incredible. If you've ever met Lori, you would remember her. She always greeted everybody with a hug and a smile. I remember when I first got to the district here, she was one of the first community members that I met. She told me who she was, and it was just welcome with open arms. She was really vested in the students of our district and wanted to give them opportunities. She didn't just go to meetings; she volunteered at every event. So anytime you saw a craft show, a meat raffle, she was there, and you could feel her presence. She's gone way too soon, and it leaves a big hole here at Sweet Home that will be impossible to fill. I know the PTA is getting together Thursday night to talk about ways they can honor her and her real legacy here at Sweet Home. I've talked to my friend Darren at Williamsville, and he's devastated, of course, because she is just was always a shining star. So we're extremely sad. Just a wonderful person, a wonderful human, and someone who put this place ahead of her own interests time and time again. So Don, I don't know.
I just a story more so. You remember for the longest time, Mike Morrow was the president of Dollars for Scholars. And Mike stepped aside about 4 years ago. And I had to find somebody to kind of sit in the role. And I identified Missy Liska, who many of you know, in the role. And Missy's like, well, I'll come and listen to what you have to say. And Missy said, I'll do it, but I'm bringing Lori with me. And she was always there. She texts about just about anything about silly ideas for fundraising. She brought little necklaces with pork chops around for the meat raffle so we could be identified easily to sell tickets. She was the reason, as you enter the high school, she was the reason that we have the alumni brick area out front of the high school. It was her idea to kind of move it forward. And she spearheaded every brick sale since. As Mike had said, she has been a long time since her two daughters went through Sweet Home, but boy, oh boy. Tough one.
You never saw Lori without a smile, ever.
When I got my doctorate, she wrote me a note, called me Dr. G for the rest of the time that I've known her. She would work with Sherry quite often to try and arrange lunch for me and Darren, which never really worked out. And every time I saw her, she's like, when are you two doing lunch? And I'm like, we're trying. But she just always just with a smile, everything was with a smile. So tough loss for Sweet Home, tough loss for Williamsville, and someone who we're gonna remember always and honor her legacy here. And we're working on plans to do that. So.
I attended the PTSA meeting. It was very difficult to get through, as they remembered Lori as more than a colleague, but mostly a friend and a volunteer here at Sweet Home. As hard as it was to get through that meeting, I will not forget several of them as they struggled to put words out, repeatedly would go, I know you don't want me to be sad. I know. But all that to be said, she was an amazing support for every organization that she was involved in, multiple entities here at Sweet Home, but also in Williamsville and the racing team that she supported so heavily. So it is sad for us, but she would want us to celebrate having known her.
I was just gonna say one more
Yeah.
thing, like, we were at the PTA meeting for the high school 3-4 weeks ago. You would have never known in a million years, Lori would have never let you know that she was going through what she was going through. People that I've talked to were shocked. They couldn't believe it because she's just always that spiritful, so.
I will say that the high school PTSA, because we're starting to, for Dollars for Scholars, solicit returning scholarship folks. And the high school PTSA has been very generous. They traditionally offer 4 scholarships to graduating seniors at $1,200 a piece. And they've changed their mantra and their prerequisites for their scholarships to shift more towards a kind of a service model to kind of emulate what Lori had done. And they've named scholarships after her to kind of start. So as Mike had said, we're meeting with the PTSA Thursday night to kind of talk further about how we can honor her, but it's just tough. Tough one.
Okay.
That's what I have tonight.
That's a hard act to follow. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Genestri? Okay, upcoming events. We have, DEI meets tomorrow. There's a few PTA meetings, some elementary events. Martin Luther King Day is on Monday. There is no classes. District will be closed. And midterms are coming up also next week for the high school, right? Just high school. Regents exams. That brings us to our first.
I'll just mention something real
Sure.
quick, since I won't be able to mention it next week. On the 28th of January, Maple Mirror, the staff will be doing a McTeacher night over at McDonald's. I will be taking over from Mr. Ryan at the cash register, I believe, during some of that time. So anybody who can join us, please come down
Is that
over
the 20th or the 28th?
no, it is the 28th. It's a Tuesday. Thank you.
That brings us to our first open session. Anybody want to speak? No, okay. All right, new business. We'll be voting on new business next week. We have our special ed placements.
I read through the 42 pages. There was nothing that stood out. And again, thank you to our special ed department for the work they do for our kids.
Our monthly financials. Revised policy second readings.
And I'd like to ask a couple questions on that. It looks like you're terminating all those policies that are on there. Is that correct?
Yes, the 4 that are recommended to delete, that's what it looks like.
Okay, so in terms of exemptions for veterans, we're not terminating that. It's just the policy we don't think we need to have as a school district. Is that correct?
Scott, I don't remember off the top of my head. Do you remember what the reason was? I seem to remember that it was mentioned elsewhere in policies. I don't remember what it was. No, we're not
December.
eliminating the veterans exemption, no.
Okay.
But I don't remember the reason off the top of my head.
If
Somebody
I
look it up.
remember it right, and
Which policy are you
I'm
talking
looking
about?
at-
5241.
can you
I think it
put
was
these on
because-
screen? by any
Reflects
chance?
outdated and incomplete information. Furthermore, to make certain property tax exemptions available, a district must hold a public hearing and adopt board resolution granting the exception. It is not sufficient to place the tax exemption in a district policy manual.
But the exemption doesn't go away, correct?
The exemption
No, just
doesn't go
it's-
away. If we were to modify or change any sort of exemption, it's got to be brought to the board's attention, then it goes to a public, there's a public comment period of 30 days, and then it goes to a public hearing, and then the board votes to adopt the change.
Okay, but it
It's
does
all
not
defined in
have-
law anyways.
Sorry.
It's all defined in law anyway, so the policy is redundant.
It doesn't really fall under our like our ability that's already out there, is what you're saying, from what I recall. It's not something
Right.
we have an impact.
And
So
we
it's
went through, I know it's
unnecessary.
before most of you were on the board, but we went through this already for the veterans.
Mhm.
Thanks, Scott.
And it's, okay. All right. Okay.
Any other questions? You said you had a couple.
I'm sorry.
You said you had a couple questions. Did you have more?
I thought all those policies were being terminated, if I read it right. One
Some are
reason
being
or another.
absorbed by other things.
And being replaced, is that what's
Well,
going
they're
on?
they're part of something else. The minutes, the first reading minutes. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And they were just redundant and included in other things, so there wasn't a need to,
Policy recommends
Separate.
deleting this policy. That's 5241. Policy Committee recommends deleting this policy, policy 5574. Policy Committee recommends deleting, on this one, it's just the change to the WVP coordinator, which I believe was Joanne Ballas, is that correct? That's somebody else. Leave of absence, recommends adopting this one. Okay, so these are second readings, so either I vote yes on them next week or I don't, correct?
Yeah, but I just want to make clear the exemptions are not going away. They're just not really necessary as part of, in the policy manual. That's what's been determined.
They're covered under state law.
Already covered. Okay, that was my biggest concern. These other two property tax exemptions, same thing?
Correct.
Second, 5241 is different than the veterans, correct? Or 5240?
It's the
Correct.
same idea.
Same idea. And then the Medicaid compliance program?
We're not going to hit the numbers. I think that's the
Correct.
expectation. There's a threshold.
There's a dollar threshold in there that we don't hit, so it doesn't apply to the district.
Okay, again, I just.
No,
I
no problem.
Needed clarification.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, on to first reading of the policies. There are 6. Any questions or comments?
Can you explain? Yeah, certainly Title IX and sex discrimination, is that based off of something that came through state ed, or is it federal Title IX law that passed through state ed to BOCES, and now we have to adopt some policy, which it looks like we want to use an attorney first, which my guess would be the attorney was going to say it's law, we have to adopt it. But if it were me, if I understand what they're trying to do here, I'd really push back very hard on that. I don't know, does anybody else have a different reading of that?
So the policy is being amended because the regulations for the US, from the US Department of Ed has been changed.
To include gender identity and some other issues about equal rights in sports, is that correct?
No, it's about married and pregnant students. So according to, from what was written, the U.S. Department of Education moved that off of Title IX into its own. So the Equal Education Opportunity 7554, we're removing the married pregnant student and giving that 7555, its own policy.
But 3421 is not for married people providing equal opportunities. It doesn't look like that.
Oh,
I'm reading
okay,
that.
sorry, that was the other one.
It's sex discrimination now explicitly includes discrimination based on sex stereotypes, characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, et cetera.
So how do you feel about that?
Any kind of discrimination is against the way that I feel.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Discrimination of any kind is not something I support.
Discrimination in Title IX sports would mean you would allow
This has nothing to do with sports.
It's in Title IX sports.
It does not say
Nothing to
sports.
do with sports. Did you read this?
Yes, it
Because it
is.
gives you all the details and sports is not mentioned in there a single time.
What is Title IX then?
I don't know. That's not what it's talking
I
about.
thought- I thought Title IX was
Sports.
to allow for equal participation
They
in
took
sports
that
for
off the
women.
table,
No.
didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Title IX has
I
been
took that
around
off.
for
That
years.
was Eliminate.
It has nothing to do with sports. Has everything to do with discrimination against,
Federally protected categories.
yes.
Right, that's my problem.
This is rewritten to align with regulations that we have to adhere to. I think that's the first piece. The second piece is why we have an attorney reviewing it is just, is some leeway, I believe, in the investigation process of, how if a complaint comes to us, there's some leeway into how to handle that. And so that was just something we wanted to double check with the attorney.
So we can get a complaint from any definition of a person. And they can actually sue us if we don't allow them to participate.
In
That-
what?
that- I don't know. This.
No, it's harassment. It's not participation.
This
It's
is.
harassment.
They're harassed. What does tell me what that Title IX means in this capacity? Just discrimination in general? I guess I'm gonna have to find the Title IX law, how this ties together.
This, just to be sure, this is Title IX and sex discrimination.
And sex discrimination.
It's, so Title IX, even if Title IX is more encompassing, this is a policy just related to that element of it,
And
which is.
Overall, it's the federal civil rights law that prohibits sex-based discrimination in any educational setting.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
And I would just say the pieces are more related to pregnancy. Those are a lot of where the changes are coming from and allowing for, some exceptions and, I think equity for pregnant students.
That's, okay. And there are other categories, correct? So I guess it's in any educational situation that we can be charged with harassment if we don't allow or have something to say about a particular person's participation or allow to play in that particular, or be part of that particular situation. So Title IX is the all encompassing all educational services provided?
Yes.
Correct. And that policy is actually not up for vote next week? No.
Gotta Go to an attorney first.
Yeah, they have to do, right, Scott? Am I
Which one?
correct?
It's not next week. This is the
34
first reading.
It's the first
Okay,
read,
yeah,
but
we
it's
went-
34,
We weren't ready
21
to discuss it.
is not
yeah.
even up for a vote on the first read.
Correct.
So.
So do you have any guess where the attorney's gonna go? The law is the law, right? So anyways, it's just a little disturbing to me. So, okay. That's all I had about that.
Okay, disposal of obsolete property. We have, some, athletic athletic uniforms.
Jerseys, yeah.
Thank you. And some, old chairs, it looks like. But mostly some old athletic uniforms. Any questions? Okay, overnight field trip request. This is for the baseball team to go to Myrtle Beach.
Their baseball team is holding a meat raffle on February 7th. You can see any player. If you are interested, modified JV and varsity.
All right.
Is that a shameful plug, sir?
Yes, it is.
Shameless plug. Shameless.
Next is the high school course planning guide.
Just one question. Are there any significant changes? I tried to go through it page by page, but they kept bouncing.
There are no
I couldn't tell.
significant
Take it
Now,
changes.
what changes? I saw that. but I don't know if any of them.
No
significant.
significant
No
changes.
changes.
I'll argue no changes, no
sorry.
significant changes.
Right,
Okay,
yes.
I found some changes. That's why I'm asking. But I gave up because they get difficult to look at them side by side. Okay, I just want to make sure
No,
there's
no
no
signi-
significant
no.
changes. They were,
Yeah.
I mean, minor wording changes here and there and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Right. We made significant changes last year, so.
Okay, so I want to make sure. A handful of years back, they tried to sneak some
Yes,
through
they
on
did.
us, which I would have been pushing for somebody to get fired if they actually got them.
The last one is a transportation contract. That is a piggyback that does not have any cost to the district. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is a West Seneca Central School District is looking to piggyback on one of our existing transportation contracts. And in order to do so and for them to receive aid, our board needs to authorize that piggyback. No cost to the district.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, they will be voted on next week. Typically, we save our informational items for next week, but we have two board members that will not be available for us next week. If they have informational items to share, I'm going to let them do so. Mary Ann, you're first.
Just a couple things. I mentioned the McDonald Night. If you can come out and support, that would be great. I attended the PTA meeting and they met their first WIG goal, which was at least 95% of attendance. So last Friday, and I know we got pictures, Mr. Ryan dressed up in the Panther. I don't want to give it away who was underneath the Panther outfit, but it was Mr. Ryan. And he's always a
All
good
those
sport.
elementary students
Yeah,
that
the
are watching.
elementaries, Yes.
Well, he had his vest on, so,
Yeah,
or
he
the
did
Panther had
have
his
the
vest
vest
on.
on
so-
with it.
Pretty identifiable.
He's just a good sport with all this. Their next WIG assignment will be, they're gonna try for 100% growth as mathematicians by May. Let's see, what else with that? As I mentioned, the Lighthouse Review Committee is on May 14th. They had a successful holiday shop. Fifth grade committee continues to work for their end of year. And they're going to do a winter skate party on February 7th. Let's see if there's anything else in that. That's probably it.
How often is the Lighthouse review?
that every
four?
Other year, I thought. Every other year?
That's
Lighthouse
every
Review?
2 years?
Every
Every
two
2 years.
Every 2 years.
Okay,
yeah.
that's more frequent than I thought. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Dirk, did you have anything you wanted to share?
I shared a little bit earlier because we had a presentation from central office about the buses, et cetera, and AI. But on the, just one other thing about the Panther logo. Katie, PTA president, was not very happy wearing it because she thought it was old and smelly. So they're kind of hopeful that with the new logo or the new Panther head, they'll get a new uniform. So,
Mr. Raymond, I will say I've gotten several complaints about the smell of the Panther, so it has definitely been a topic at central office, and we are waiting on our new logo to design a new.
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And Antonio Perry, high school principal, was there and very proud of his accomplishment there. So
Yeah.
it was a very nice meeting, and I'll, once the minutes are available, I'll pass it on. Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Everybody else will be here next week, correct? Okay, perfect. That brings us to our second open session. Anyone? Personnel, we'll be voting on personnel next week. And with that, may I have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session for
Oh,
contract?
I just want to recognize, saw Maggie McDonald's name on there. She'll be retiring. I believe it's on the, I'm allowed to say that publicly, right? So if you don't know that, she taught my youngest daughter many, many years ago. So I will miss having her around. I thought she was a great teacher and a great person. So anyways, that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion and a second to adjourn to executive session for contract negotiations and matters related to employment history of a particular individual?
Are we still doing that?
Yes, we're still going to
Okay, still-
executive.
okay.
Mhm. We will not be returning.